So the whole week, I used to rehearse my words, what I'm going to say to her. Okay? That's how bad my English was, but I learned quite well. So it took me a few years, but there used to be the but and the then and the why and the how, you know. But now I speak pretty good English, don't I? Huh?
Yes.
But it's mine, it's not a teacher. It's all me. Thank you. Yes.
Did you make any, like, I know it must have been hard, but did you make any, like, friendships or companions while you were in, like, camps?
Well, the people ask me sometimes that same question. I want to tell you something. The camaraderie, I cannot describe to you how great it was. This is what kept a lot of us going. Okay, I met a lot of people. Wonderful, wonderful guys. Because if you didn't have any camaraderie, you're a dead duck. Because we helped each other. The lady behind there? Yes.
How did you guys know that the Americans were coming to help?
Pardon me?
How did you know that the Americans were coming to help? Like
To
the
help.
soldiers. To free you guys?
How did you know? You saw the tanks coming or what?
Or how did you guys know that they were Americans coming?
Americans coming to get you?
Oh, how did we know? The uniforms were different.
Mm.
That's how we knew. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, the uniforms were quite different. Because, you know, you can tell the German uniforms were kind of greenish, and, you know, the Americans are kind of, you know, khaki and all that. Yeah. Though, thank God, they were wonderful guys. Yes? Yeah.
Where did the Germans, did they just like start running away? Where did they go whenever the Americans came in?
Do they what?
Where did the Germans go?
There was we were liberating Camp Germany, as I mentioned. There was a forest on one side, and there was a field on the other side. So all the Germans ran into the forest, and the tanks, you know, I'm sure you've probably seen it, had these flamethrowers coming out the tank, but the Germans came out with their hands in the air because they set the forest on fire. So they came out just like that. That was the end of it. Huh? You like that? Yes.
Have you kept up with anyone you were liberated with?
Have you what?
Have you kept up with anyone you were liberated with?
Tell you the truth, actually, I don't know how familiar you are. I live in St. Louis County. We have a street called Washington Avenue. Anybody heard of Washington Avenue? Yeah. You know, St. Louis was the third largest city in the country of making garments. So I did meet two guys after about several years. One of them was a Carly dress factory that somebody told me that is a Holocaust survivor. Another one was in another shop. So I met two guys after all the years, but I tell you, I had my own life to live. I had children. I worked very hard. Believe it or not, I averaged in the United States the first 20 years between 80 to 85 hours a week. Sometimes I'd come in 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. My wife was sound asleep. I give her a kiss, and I just fall to the ground. Okay? Mm-hmm. So this is what I did for 20 years. But after 20 years, it got a lot better. Believe me, got quite good. Yes?
How many, like, not exactly, but like around the number of how many Jewish,
I'm quite sorry.
how many like Jewish folks were like liberated? Like
How many Jewish folks got liberated? It's hard for me to say, my dear. There weren't all Jewish guys that were liberated, okay? There was a lot of other different guys that committed different crimes and that the Germans liberated, like Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and all these places. And I don't know how many Jews were. I could never tell you, but I know most of the guys that I slept with, 3 or 4 guys in a bed, were probably all Jewish. But there was a few non-Jewish that they were in that were against the German government or against this, against that. They shoved them in. They also had the guys that were Verbrecher, they call the word in German, that were informers. If we did something wrong in the factory, for instance, somebody tried to sabotage something, they were informers to the SS. Well, you know the SS, don't you? Or the Gestapo, or whatever. They informed, and if, when you get home, I'll call home, when you get to the camp, they'd pick them out, and we used to have special places where they hang the guys and they put a sign, this is what we do if you're caught stealing or talking about anybody or something like that. So every other day, they take that guys down, they'll be hanging for a week or so, or 2 days or 3, and they hang up new ones. You cannot open your mouth. Only thing you can stay alive is you gotta be able to get up in the morning, go to the factory, work your can off, and be able to come back and wait for a bowl of soup that you get. Otherwise, you're a dead duck. You had to be strong. And thank God, I had a good guard watch over me who kept me alive. Thank you. Yes?
Why were you and your dad separated from the rest of your
Pardon?
Why were you and your dad separated from the rest of your family?
Why I was separated?
Yeah, when you guys went to separate camps. Why were you and your
Well,
dad?
I was separated with my dad, from my dad.
The men and the women were.
Oh, the men, there was camps that was separate women and separate guys. I have never been in a camp where there was women and guys. Okay? Most of the women were with children, and if they went with children, they didn't give up the children, they went to Auschwitz, and they went to the gas chamber.
But she was asking, I think, about your dad specifically and you. You were separated immediately?
Well, no, my dad and I were separated from the first camp, from the forced labor camp. He went to a different place, and I went to a different place.
Did your siblings and your mom all go to the same one?
My mom with children went from the very beginning of the war. Yeah. Anybody else?
Here's a question.
Pardon me? Oh,
How old were you whenever you taught yourself English?
I what?
How old were you whenever you taught yourself English?
How old was I when I came out?
How old
No,
were you
whenever
when
you
you
taught
taught
yourself
yourself
English.
English?
Oh, how old was I? Oh, I guess in Dublin, Ireland. From the first few months I went to the Dublin, Ireland, the beginning of 1946. I'll do it in 45.
So right after,
Right after that, yes, I taught myself English. I used to read at night, half the night, and whenever I had off. And I got a book that said from Polish to English on one side, and that's how I taught myself. I never had a teacher.
But he still speaks a lot of languages. He remembers a lot of them.
I used to speak about 15 different languages. I'm down to 6.
you have
7.
6 now?
Yeah.
So fluently you can speak 6?
Pardon?
You can fluently speak
I
6?
speak fluently 6, yes.
Wow.
You've been on a cruise ship with, like the waiters from all different nationalities. And you speak to all of them.
Did you know that this was happening before you were taken, or your family?
In Poland, no. Nobody knew because we were right about 40 kilometers or whatever it was, and Benjin was near the German border. And it wasn't about maybe 3.5 days when the German came into my town. And they were taken away. Didn't know anything about it. Yes,
In Ireland, how did you and your wife meet?
pardon?
How did you and your wife meet?
How did I and my wife meet? Nobody ever asked me that question. Well, you know how the song goes? You ever heard that song? When I was a young man courting the girls? You ever heard that song? I played me a waiting game. It took me 6 months before I got a date. I used to go to a ballroom called the Four Provinces in Dublin, Ireland. Okay? The bakery was closed the first year that I used to work for my auntie, as I mentioned to you, right? I used to go dancing. And every time I go over to this particular lady that I had my eye on, Susan, and every time I asked her to dance, she refused me. For 6 months. Believe it or not. So one day, on a Saturday evening, I said, I'm going to go over to this bitch. I have to tell you the truth. In my way of not knowing, I just said that in Polish and in Yiddish and everything. So I walked over to her and I said, this is the last time. I rehearsed for a few days what I'm going to say to her. this is the last time I'm going to come over and ask you to dance. She says, is that right? Why is that? I said, well, for 6 months I'm tired of it, and I said I was going to ask you to dance, and maybe we'll go up for coffee and a pastry. So she looked at me. She said, I'll go for the coffee or pastry. That was the beginning of our friendship. Okay? But I was married for 3 years of courtship, and you know, with a good Catholic girl, you don't mess around. And 43 years of marriage. Okay, so this is me. Thank you, dear. So you got something out of me, but very few people got.
Bill, why don't you take one more question?
Yes.
What brought you to St. Louis?
About 2 or 3 people asked me that question over the period of a few years. I worked for a company in Toronto, Canada, and there was a gentleman by the name of Steve Zucker, and he was the foreman of the cutting room and the designer and all that. And I got tired of working there, so did he, okay? So he said, Ben, I'm going to the United States. I said, good show, Steve. And I said, when you going? He says, nobody knows anything except you, because I have to tell Mr. Goldberg and Phil Cole, that was the boss's name. He said, when you going? He said, I got my papers, probably about 2 or 3 weeks at the most. He said, now I'll send papers for you, and we'll get together. I'll get you a job and everything. So anyway, it so happened, I met my father when I came to St. Louis for a few days, and I was staying in his apartment, and he threw away all the stuff that Steve sent me. Maybe he was changing a little change of heart. My father and I never got along. So I didn't go to California. I stayed in the United States, okay? So I came from Canada to the United States, as I mentioned to you, okay? So I stayed here, and I went from one place to another, 6 months here, 6 months there. I wasn't in the best of neighborhoods, you know? So I bought my own home, and I've stayed in the United States, and I've been here since 1957. I became a citizen on the day of 1962. I'm a good American. Okay? Thank you. Anybody else? Yes?
What do you like most about America?
What?
What do you like most about America?
What do I,
Like most about America?
Like most about America.
what I like most about America? I love my freedom. I love to do what I like, and I can say whatever I like. As long as I don't insult nobody, right? And I don't use foul mouth. Right? And I'm a good guy. I'll tell you the 2 worst things I've committed in America. I don't say that to too many people, but being you ask me, I will tell you. I got a ticket. That's the gospel truth. In 1958. I went to work about 5 o'clock in the morning. I had to pick up some packages to mail to the post office, okay? For customers, very special customers. So anyway, at that time I had a 55 Dodge. And I happened to go through a yellow light near Kings Highway in Euclid. There was a couple of gentlemen of the police force. I see a headlight. So I pulled over, and he said, you went through a red light. And I said, no. It was yellow. And I said, I taught myself, well, yellow means proceed with caution, isn't that right? Huh? Yes or no? So he said, no, you went through a red. I said, well, I'll see you in court. So I lost a half a day's pay. I went to court, sat for about 4 hours. The judge calls me up. He says, sir, your officer says that you went to a yellow light. And I said, no, Your Honor. It was raining, it was sleeting, and I said to stop. Somebody would hit me in the rear end. And I said, I went through a yellow light. It was not red, Your Honor. He said, you know something, son, I believe you. Case dismissed. See this sweet little lady over here? I was coming out from a turn by Walgreens, Mason Road, about, what, 4 years ago? And a nice little gentleman said, you didn't yield.
Well, before that, I said, I think you cut off the cop.
So I said, okay, write a ticket, officer. He says, you're very nice. I said, you're going to give me a ticket if I'm nice or not? So I said, thank you very much. I pulled down the street. There's a police station. I have a friend of mine who's a judge. And I left it with Joe, will you take care of this for me? It was a $180 ticket.
Wow.
So Joe called me up. He said, Ben, you got your Christmas present early, I see. I said, I'll take care of it. That's the only 2 crimes I committed in the United States. One ticket I won, one I fixed. Huh? Pretty good, right? So this is, but I want to tell you something. I've had a wonderful life in America. I worked very, very hard. I made a lot of money. I blew a lot of money. Right now I have enough to get by for another 15 years if I play my cards right. And the doctor told me I'm good for another 40, so maybe 39. So I'll be part out of luck when my money runs out after 15 years. But the God has provided me with a good book. I might make some money. Some of it I'll give, the best part of it I'll give away. And I'm going to enjoy my lady friend. How's that?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, we've got a few minutes here before class lines up. If you would like to come up and talk to Ben, I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. If you happen to have any devices that allow you to take pictures, either ones you found in your pocket, or if you'd like to possibly retrieve one from your locker, you may do that now, because you're all about taking pictures with us, right?
Well, I love it, yeah.
All right.
Before.
And we'll try to get a big group picture before the end of the hour. So come on down and meet him. Feel free to go get your phones, cameras as needed.
You want to take a picture with it?